The laughter starts before anything even happens. Not loud enough to feel cruel, but loud enough to be confident. A 2-meter giant steps forward, towering over everyone nearby. His shadow alone feels intimidating. The crowd reacts instantly, eyes moving from his massive frame to the man standing across from him. That man is Bruce Lee. He looks smaller, quieter, almost out of place. No dramatic entrance. No reaction to the laughter. No attempt to match the energy in the room. And that's exactly what makes people uncomfortable. The giant smiles, relaxed, certain this will be over quickly. From the outside, it makes sense. Size like that usually decides things before they even begin. People whisper. Some shake their heads. Others already think they know the ending. Bruce Lee doesn't move. He stands there calm, breathing steady, eyes focused, not on the giant's strength, but on his timing, on his balance, on the space between them. The laughter fades slightly, not because anyone says anything, but because the silence from Bruce Lee feels deliberate. It's the kind of silence that suggests control. In that moment, the crowd realizes this isn't going to be about who looks stronger. Something feels off. Something feels misjudged. And even before the first move is made, one question hangs in the air. Did everyone underestimate the wrong person? At first glance, the contrast feels almost unfair. The 2-meter giant owns the space without trying. Every step is heavy, deliberate, confident. His posture alone sends a message. Dominance through size, presence through mass. The crowd reads it instantly. This is what power is supposed to look like. Then there's Bruce Lee. He doesn't try to compete visually. No widened stance. No exaggerated movement. His body language is relaxed, almost neutral, as if the size difference doesn't register as a problem worth reacting to. To some, it looks like hesitation. To others, like overconfidence. That difference in interpretation creates tension. Expectation says size decides outcomes. Reality hasn't spoken yet. The giant shifts his weight, testing the ground, comfortable in the belief that reach and strength will handle everything else. Bruce Lee remains still, not frozen, prepared. His calm feels intentional, not passive. The audience begins to split. Some trust what they see. Others start questioning it. Because while the giant looks ready to overpower, Bruce Lee looks ready to understand. And in moments like this, understanding quietly becomes an advantage. The space between them feels charged now. Not with aggression, but with anticipation. What everyone thought would be obvious suddenly isn't. The giant breaks the stillness first. Not with an attack, just movement. A slow shift of the shoulders. A roll of the neck. Small gestures meant to signal comfort, even boredom. He wants Bruce Lee to notice how relaxed he is, how certain this feels to him. Confidence, when displayed early, can be a weapon on its own. Bruce Lee notices everything. He doesn't react outwardly. No change in posture, no tightening of muscles. But his attention sharpens. His eyes aren't fixed on the giant's size or strength. They follow rhythm, weight transfer, breathing, the subtle pauses between motions that most people ignore. The crowd senses this contrast before they understand it. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. But psychologically, the tension is already rising. The giant expects a response. Fear, aggression, at least movement. Instead, Bruce Lee offers stillness. And stillness, when it's intentional, creates uncertainty. The giant laughs again, shorter this time, less playful. He steps forward, testing distance. The move is casual, but it's also a probe. He wants to see how Bruce Lee adjusts. Does he step back? Does he tense up? Does he react like someone who feels threatened? Bruce Lee doesn't give him that satisfaction. He shifts just enough to stay balanced. Not retreating, not advancing, simply aligned. That tiny adjustment changes the dynamic. The giant's expectation of control hits resistance. Not physical resistance, but psychological friction. The audience starts to feel it now. This isn't about strength yet. It's about reading intent. The giant is showing his hand through comfort, through assumption, through the belief that the situation favors him automatically. Bruce Lee, on the other hand, is gathering information without revealing any of his own. The tension grows because one side is performing and the other is observing. Every second that passes without an obvious reaction increases the pressure on the giant. Confidence needs validation. Silence denies it. The laughter fades completely. His movements become slightly more deliberate, less casual. The shift is subtle, but it's there. Bruce Lee remains unchanged. That consistency sends a quiet message, not to intimidate, but to unsettle. It suggests preparedness without urgency, control without force. And the giant feels it, even if he can't explain why. The crowd leans forward. They may not know what's coming, but they can sense it. The balance of the moment is no longer decided by size or noise. It's being shaped by awareness. And in that psychological space, before anything physical begins, the real contest has already started. The shift doesn't arrive with impact. It arrives with hesitation. The giant makes the first real move. Not rushed, not reckless. It's controlled, deliberate, the kind of motion that assumes compliance from the space around it. He expects Bruce Lee to react the way most people do when pressure finally becomes real. But reaction is exactly what Bruce Lee refuses to give. Instead of responding to the movement itself, he responds to what it represents. The timing, the intent, the confidence behind it. His body adjusts in a way that's barely noticeable to the untrained eye, just enough to stay centered, just enough to remain untouched by the momentum being sent his way. Nothing dramatic happens, and that's what makes it unsettling. The crowd begins to feel the escalation not through action, but through interpretation. Each small movement now carries weight. Every step, every shift feels like a question being asked and answered silently. The giant moves again, slightly faster this time. Not because he needs to, but because the lack of response is starting to irritate him. Bruce Lee remains calm. He doesn't match speed. He doesn't mirror aggression. He lets the giant's confidence continue to speak for him. That confidence, once solid, now has cracks forming in it. Not because of failure, but because of uncertainty. The escalation happens internally. The giant begins to interpret Bruce Lee's stillness as a challenge, as disrespect, as something that needs to be corrected. His movements grow sharper, more purposeful. He's no longer just occupying space. He's trying to control it. Bruce Lee doesn't contest that control directly. Instead, he reframes it. Each time the giant advances, Bruce Lee adjusts the angle. Each time pressure is applied, it's redirected, not resisted. To the audience, it looks like nothing is changing. But to the giant, something feels wrong. The distance never closes the way he expects it to. The balance never shifts in his favor the way it should. That's where the escalation truly begins. The giant starts working harder to achieve the same result. His breathing changes. His posture tightens. What once felt automatic now requires focus. And focus, when forced, becomes tension. Bruce Lee notices the moment this happens. He doesn't capitalize on it immediately. He lets it develop. He allows the giant to continue interpreting the situation incorrectly, believing that more effort will solve the problem. The audience can sense this widening gap between perception and reality. What the giant thinks is happening, and what is actually happening, are no longer the same thing. The crowd reacts subtly, not with cheers or gasps, but with silence. The kind of silence that forms when people realize they're watching a process, not an explosion. The escalation is psychological, unfolding in layers rather than moments. Bruce Lee's movements remain minimal, efficient, purposeful. He's not escalating the situation. He's allowing it to escalate itself. Every second that passes without resolution increases the pressure on the giant. He feels the need to assert control more clearly, more decisively. But the harder he tries to impose certainty, the more uncertain the situation becomes. This is where interpretation replaces action. The audience begins to understand that nothing new needs to happen for the outcome to change. The imbalance is already forming, not in strength, but in understanding. One side is trying to force the moment. The other is shaping it. Bruce Lee's calm now feels heavy, intentional, almost instructional. The escalation reaches its peak not when something happens, but when everyone realizes that something already has. And by the time the giant senses it fully, the window to correct it has already closed. Because escalation doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes, it simply reveals who was ready all along. The moment doesn't explode into chaos. It tightens. For a brief instant, everything feels suspended, sound, movement, even expectation. The giant commits fully now, not out of anger, but certainty. This is the point where he believes presence becomes action, where size finally translates into control. And that's when the 4 seconds begin. Bruce Lee moves, not fast in a way that looks aggressive, but precise in a way that feels inevitable. There's no wasted motion, no visible strain. His body responds, as if the moment had already been decided long before it arrived. The first second changes alignment. What looked like dominance suddenly feels mispositioned. The giant's forward intent meets empty space where resistance was expected. His balance shifts slightly, not enough to fall, but enough to be noticed. The crowd doesn't react yet. They're still processing. The second removes certainty. Bruce Lee adjusts again, subtly, calmly. The giant's momentum no longer belongs to him. It's being redirected, not fought. His confidence doesn't disappear, it hesitates. And hesitation, even brief, creates vulnerability. The third second creates awareness. The giant realizes something is wrong. Not physically, psychologically. His strength hasn't failed him, but it hasn't helped him either. The assumptions he relied on are no longer guiding his movement. He's reacting now, not leading. Bruce Lee remains composed. His expression doesn't change. There's no rush to finish, no need to prove anything. He simply completes the sequence the moment demands. Every movement fits, as if it were the only logical response available. The 4th second changes everything. The giant's position collapses, not dramatically, but conclusively. Control shifts. Balance is gone. What began as laughter ends in silence. Not because the crowd is shocked by force, but because they just witnessed understanding overpower assumption. It's over. Not in spectacle. In clarity. Bruce Lee steps back, creating space instead of claiming it. That choice matters. It reframes what just happened. This wasn't about domination. It was about timing, awareness, and restraint. The giant doesn't fall immediately. He steadies himself, eyes wide, not with fear but realization. He understands now that the 4 seconds didn't change the situation. They revealed it. The audience reacts in waves. First confusion, then awe, then that quiet acknowledgement people make when they realize they've misjudged something. No one cheers right away. Applause comes later, softer, layered with respect. Bruce Lee doesn't acknowledge it. He doesn't look to the crowd. He doesn't look for validation. That absence of reaction amplifies the moment more than any celebration could. It tells everyone watching that this outcome wasn't surprising to him. It was expected, prepared for, resolved long before it happened. The giant steps back fully now. The laughter from earlier feels distant, almost unreal. His size hasn't changed. His strength hasn't vanished. But his understanding has shifted permanently. And so has the room. People replay the 4 seconds in their minds, trying to pinpoint exactly when everything changed. Some think it was the movement. Others think it was the timing. A few realize it wasn't either. It was the preparation behind them. That's the power of the moment. It doesn't overwhelm. It educates. Bruce Lee doesn't stay in the center. He fades from it. The space he leaves behind feels different, quieter, heavier, more thoughtful. The giant remains still for a moment longer, not defeated, but transformed by recognition. For seconds passed, but the lesson stays. The reaction doesn't come all at once. At first, the crowd stays silent, not because they're confused, but because they're recalibrating. What they expected to see and what they just witnessed don't align. People exchange looks, not words. Everyone is replaying the same few seconds in their head, searching for the moment where their assumption broke. Then the realization settles. This wasn't about surprise or spectacle. It was about understanding. The audience begins to share the same perspective, almost instinctively. They recognized that what decided the moment didn't look powerful, didn't sound impressive, and didn't demand attention. That's what makes it unsettling. The giant didn't lose because he lacked strength. Bruce Lee didn't prevail because of aggression. The shift happened because one side read the situation more clearly. As this understanding spreads, the energy in the space changes. The excitement transforms into respect. Not loud, not explosive, quiet and collective. People nod to themselves. Some smile slightly, others sit back, absorbing what they just learned. The audience becomes unified in that realization. They aren't watching anymore. They're reflecting. And in that shared silence, the moment becomes bigger than the action itself, because everyone now understands why it unfolded the way it did. Once the moment passes, what lingers isn't the movement, it's the meaning behind it. The scene slows down in everyone's mind. Without the tension of anticipation, people begin to process what they actually witnessed. Not a display of dominance, but a demonstration of awareness. The kind that doesn't announce itself and doesn't seek validation. Bruce Lee doesn't appear victorious in the traditional sense. He appears unchanged. That detail matters. It humanizes the moment. It suggests that this outcome wasn't fueled by ego or emotion, but by preparation and clarity. He didn't need to prove anything because the moment spoke for him. The giant, too, becomes more human here. His size, once the defining feature, fades into the background. What stands out now is recognition. The quiet acceptance that something unexpected happened, not because of weakness, but because of misjudgment. That realization is relatable. Everyone has experienced a moment where confidence outpaced understanding. That's why the story resonates. It isn't about one person overpowering another. It's about how easily perception can mislead us and how calmly awareness can correct it. The absence of celebration, confrontation, or humiliation allows the audience to connect without discomfort. There's no villain, no humiliation, just contrast. Bruce Lee's restraint is what makes the moment accessible. He doesn't react with triumph. He creates space. That decision reframes everything. It tells the audience this wasn't about winning. It was about control, timing, and responsibility. Viewers begin to reflect inward. They think about moments where they relied too heavily on surface-level advantages. Moments where patience would have changed the outcome. Moments where silence carried more power than reaction. That's the human core of the story. It doesn't demand admiration. It invites understanding. It doesn't instruct. It illustrates. And because of that, the audience doesn't feel talked at. They feel included. The moment becomes personal not because it was dramatic, but because it was familiar in its lesson. Awareness over assumption. Calm over reaction. That's what stays with them long after the scene ends. The arena exhales, slowly, not with noise, but with the collective release of tension that had been building for moments that felt like hours. The giant stands still, no longer laughing, no longer moving with the certainty that dominated the space before. His posture is less confident, not because he's broken, but because understanding has replaced assumption. Bruce Lee takes a step back, creating distance rather than claiming it. He doesn't demand attention. He doesn't seek acknowledgement. His calm presence speaks louder than any gesture could. The restraint he demonstrates reinforces the point. Control, patience, and awareness carry more weight than immediate action or visible dominance. The audience begins to settle into that calm. Some nod subtly. Others sit back, processing what they've just witnessed. The moment no longer revolves around size, force, or spectacle. It revolves around understanding. Everyone can sense it, whether they're in the front row or imagining the scene from afar. The subtlety of what just occurred makes the lesson all the more powerful. The giant exhales, a quiet acknowledgement that the encounter has ended differently than he expected. There's no embarrassment, no outburst, just recognition. That recognition is human. It's relatable. It shows the audience that even overwhelming confidence can meet its match when it encounters precision and composure. Bruce Lee remains unchanged, calm, centered, and unbothered. That lack of reaction amplifies the impact of the event. He doesn't need to assert dominance. The moment itself does it for him. The audience absorbs that message. Mastery is not about force. It's about timing, understanding, and restraint. In this quiet resolution, both participants retain their dignity. The giant's size and presence still command attention, but the understanding of the audience has shifted. The power dynamic is clear without conflict, without dramatics, without spectacle. The story isn't about defeat or victory in the conventional sense. It's about awareness, perception, and the unspoken lessons embedded in calm composure. As the scene fades, the crowd is left reflecting. The moment feels timeless. The lesson is clear. Real influence doesn't always need to be loud, and true mastery isn't measured by immediate outcomes. It's measured by poise, perception, and the ability to remain unshaken under pressure. That calm closure turns an intense encounter into a story that lingers far longer than the 4 seconds it took to change everything. The structure of this story works because it unfolds through contrast and observation, not through overt action or dramatic exaggeration. From the beginning, attention is captured by presenting an unexpected mismatch, creating curiosity without forcing conflict. Early tension is built through perception, size versus skill, confidence versus composure, allowing the audience to interpret stakes for themselves. Escalation happens through interpretation, not new facts. Every movement, glance, and subtle shift communicates meaning. The story emphasizes timing and psychological dynamics, keeping the audience mentally engaged as they anticipate the turning point. The 4-second shift serves as a climactic reveal, where prior tension resolves organically through precision and awareness rather than spectacle. Humanization and calm closure allow viewers to relate, reflect, and internalize the lesson without feeling preached to.